So, we have been talking about knowledge, representation, inferences, structures, languages, logic and so on. Of course, we will study these things in more detail in this course. So, let us do a quick tour of what are the different kind of logics that we will look at for the kind of reasoning that we want to do. The main core of our course will be reasoning, that if you are given some facts, what can you infer from there. We will begin with propositional logic, which is the simplest of all languages, and we would study as to what do we mean by valid arguments. So, in propositional logic, also called sentential logic, we treat sentences as individual entities. So, in this two questions that I have posed here that you should think about, these are the sentences. The earth is spherical. If the earth was spherical, the earth is spherical, we will just treat it as some sentence and give it some symbol. If it is spherical, it casts curved shadows on the moon. So, there are two sentences here and there is a connection between the first and the second one. If the first one is true, then the second one will definitely be true. So, that is one piece of information that is given to you. The other one is that the earth is casting curved shadows on the moon, and then we are drawing the conclusion that it must be spherical. So, this is the argument. If it is spherical, it will cast curved shadows on the moon. It is casting curved shadows on the moon, so it must be spherical. Is this reasoning sound or valid, as we say, or not essentially? So, think about that. Here is the second argument, second problem. He used good bait and the fish weren't smarter than he. These are two sentences. If he used good bait and the fish were not smarter than him, then he did not go hungry, or then he would not go hungry. Then we are saying he did use good bait, but he also did go hungry. So, can we infer that the fish must be smarter than he was? So, logic is concerned with trying to decide on the validity of such arguments. The origins of logic, both in the West and in India, where it was developed to quite an extent, was in some sense as a science of arguments, that if people are arguing, is there a way of determining who is right and who is wrong, who is correct, whose statement, whose conclusion is true. And the goal of logic is to understand valid forms of argument, valid patterns of argument, and then see whether given arguments follow one of those patterns. And we will start with propositional logic, which is a very simple logic, which does not look inside sentences and looks at what makes argument valid essentially. So, we will look at the notion of soundness and completeness when we talk about these things. Then we will move on to first order logic. First order logic introduces a domain. So, we have been talking about domains. Now, what should be the individuals in the domain and things like that. When we talk about first order logic, we have to talk about domains. So, let us say the domain is a domain of people in our world, and in that scenario, first order logic allows us to make statements like the example giving here, or the simplest logic that everyone starts studying with, which said that all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore, Socrates is mortal. So, you can see that we are talking of a domain. When we say all men, we are talking about all the individuals in the domain, that everybody who is there in the domain, Socrates, Plato, uh, whatever, whatever individuals you have, all of them are mortal essentially. So, first order logic allows us to talk about domains, about individuals in the domain, about relations between individuals and relations between categories. So, we have seen that essentially. So, in this domain, we are saying that there are 4 entities we are talking about: tinker, tailor, soldier, spy. You can look at this, it is one of my favorite novels, which has a lot of logical reasoning embedded inside there. So, this example is of course not from the novel, but I have just used their names. So, this first sentence is saying that one of them is the culprit. Okay. So, this is what you can say in first order logic, that we are talking about individuals and there exists an culprit, and the culprit is one of these 4 individuals. Then we can say the culprit stole the document. Without knowing who the culprit is, we are saying that there is an individual in our domain who stole the document, and we have already said that one of them, one of these 4 people is the culprit. These were code names that John Le Carre, the author of the novel, had given to 4 suspects that he had. So, it is a fascinating story, you must go and read it sometime or watch the film. Then we are also told in this small example that I have created that tinker and soldier did not steal the document. Obviously, the logical conclusion is then it must be either the soldier or the spy, but logic allows you to arrive at these conclusions. Sorry, tailor or the spy. Then we are told that if the tailor or the spy is the culprit, we are not told who is the culprit, that if one of them is the culprit, then the document must be in Paris. All this is given to us, and given these facts, can you conclude that the document is in Paris essentially? And first order logic allows us to formalize this kind of reasoning and show that here is a proof that the document is in Paris. So, we have the notion of variables. Variables are some unknown entities in the domain. We have the notion of quantifiers. So, we can say all men, some men, one of these, that kind of stuff. But first order logic by itself does not involve time. So, we do not think about this was true at some time, this became true at a later time and things like that. First order logic is changeless. So, sometimes we say it is mathematical logic essentially, because mathematics is changeless essentially. So, whatever is true in mathematics is true in mathematics. It is not that it was true yesterday and it will be true tomorrow. It is changeless. First order logic handles that kind of domains quite easily. It is a logic of relations, predicates capture relations between individuals and so on, between elements of sets essentially. So, that is the next logic that we will look at, which is first order logic. It turns out that first order logic is computationally very expensive, and very often all its power is not required in the kind of reasoning that you want to do, and then we will resort to a subset of this logic or subset of this language, which is like a logic of noun phrases, that we will only talk about noun phrases. So, in this small example here, we are talking about 2 kinds of companies, a progressive high tech company and a tech company. So, a tech company is one all whose employees have technical degrees. So, let us say all techies and they form a company. A progressive high tech company, so that is another description. So, description logic allows you to describe such things together, describe concepts essentially or categories. So, we are defining the class of tech companies and the class of progressive tech companies. The progressive high tech company is one which has at least 5 women on its board of directors, and one in which all the employees have technical degrees. Now, which is of course also true of tech companies. But in a progressive tech company, the minimum salary is 100,000, whatever the units are. Description logic allows you to very quickly come to conclusions that a progressive high tech company is a tech company. So, the kind of things that we talked about earlier, that all cats are mammals and so on. Here we are describing entities, and this logic allows us to unearth the relation, that this is a relation holds between these two entities. One is a progressive high tech company and one is a tech company. And description logics are very common nowadays, because of ontologies which have become very common because of a lot of activity which is going on in the internet. So, we talk about ontologies and things like that. Then I had mentioned the open world assumption. In the open world assumption, you do not know everything about the world essentially. So, a classic example, the standard example of default reasoning is that if somebody tells you that Tweety is a bird, then you can conclude that Tweety can fly. If you do not tell me anything about Tweety, then you can conclude that Tweety can fly. And this is called default reasoning, that okay, I will go ahead and make that assumption. If I get to know something else, then maybe I will withdraw this assumption. Because even though there exist birds, for example, penguins and ostriches which cannot fly, in general most birds fly, and we want to capture this kind of knowledge about birds, that that birds can fly, but maybe there are some birds which cannot fly essentially. So, it is not universal knowledge, it is general knowledge. We want to capture this sort of a thing essentially. So, in the real world, an intelligent agent has to make inferences even with incomplete information. In such a scenario, one has to make use of what is generally true in a typical situation, that if Tweety is a bird, then Tweety can fly. Of course, if later on I come and tell you that Tweety is a penguin, or that Tweety is an ostrich, or that Tweety is dead, or that Tweety is a caged bird, or Tweety is injured, whatever, there can be a multitude of reasons for which it cannot fly. If I give you that more information, then you can say, okay, I will take back my conclusion that Tweety can fly. And in default reasoning, you are allowed to do that, you are allowed to make conclusions, and then you take them back essentially. So, I had used the word non-monotonic reasoning, non-monotonic logics in this context, that you may add certain conclusions, but you may withdraw them later also. So, it is not necessary that your set of conclusions will grow monotonically. New information may contradict and defeat the conclusion. So, we use that the inference is defeasible, which means it can be defeated. Then we will also talk about event calculus, because we want to talk about time, we want to talk about change, we want to talk about actions, the effect of actions on the real world and things like that, which, as we said, first order logic is timeless. It is does not allow for change essentially. When we want to talk about change, we are saying something is true at this moment, but it may not be true at a later moment, or if an agent does certain action, it will make certain fact true essentially. So, all the change and time and action and events should be allowed, and that is done in something which we will call as the event calculus. So, here is an example of that. Jogesh made a cup of tea and left it on the table. Meanwhile, Smita saw the cup of tea and drank it. When Jogesh came back, he saw that the cup was empty. So, you should be able to represent this kind of changing things, and you may want to be able to conclude certain things and things like that. So, that is going to be about event calculus. And the last thing that we will study in the course is going to be something called epistemic logic, in which agents reason about what other agents know. So, if we take this Jogesh story, that he made a cup of tea and left, and Smita came and drank it, and he saw that the cup was empty. Supposing there are these only two people in the house at that moment. So, he can conclude that Smita had polished off his cup of tea. That comes from event calculus essentially in some sense. But Smita will know that Yogesh knew that she drank the tea. This is what epistemic logic allows you to do. Smita can know something, and that knowing something is the fact that Yogesh knows something, and what Yogesh knows is the fact that Smita drank the tea essentially. So, when we look at epistemic logic, we would represent this as a sentence K S, where K would be the knowledge operator as we would call it, K J, that she drank the tea. So, let us just call that statement as T. So, T stands for the fact that Smita drank the tea. KJ's T stands for the fact that Yogesh knows that Smita drank the tea, and KS KJ T stands for the fact that Smita knows that Yogesh knows that she drank the tea. This is what we will do towards the end of the course. So, these are the topics that we will look at roughly in the order in which we are going to look at. We will start by talking about logic and languages and symbols and thought and so on. We will introduce this notion of soundness and completeness of logics, in which we will say that when is a logic machine useful. Essentially, it has to be sound, which means it has to make only valid arguments, and it has to be complete, that it should be able to make all valid arguments. Then we will look at a specific logic, which is the propositional logic, which I have mentioned a little while ago. And in propositional logic, we will look at two proof methods: direct proof as to what is the standard way in which everybody learns to prove things. We will also look at something called the tableau method essentially. Then we will move on to first order logic, which is going to be the main part of our course essentially. We will look at this language, we will look at what we can do in that language, what kind of inferences we can do in that language. We will start by forward chaining, which kind of corresponds to direct proof. We will look at backward chaining, which is also like direct proof, but you start from the conclusion and then move towards the goal. Then we will see that those two things are not enough, and we will look at a method called the resolution refutation method. And from there we will move to this idea of logic programming, which will say that whatever you can do in any programming language, you can do in logic. So, making inferences subsumes doing computation. Whatever computation you can do, you can express the whole thing in logic. And we will look at, to some extent, this language called Prolog, which is a logic programming language. It stands for programming in logic. Actually, the phrase comes from French language, because one of the inventors of Prolog was from France. And we will also look at something called the Rete net, which is connected to forward chaining and doing it efficiently. Then we will move to representation, and we will talk about reification, which we have already talked about a little bit here. Then we will see at this canonical set of representations, which is not as diverse and rich as language, but which allows you to do a lot of reasoning. We will look at the structured knowledge in the form of frames and scripts. We look at inheritance. We will look at descriptional logics that we mentioned. We will look at ways of talking about systems which implement taxonomies and description logics. Then we will move on to things which are more powerful than first order logic. So, default reasoning in particular, circumscription is a particular way of doing default reasoning, and we will look at event calculus that we have just mentioned, that which will capture time and change and events and action essentially. And as I said, finally, we will discuss epistemic logic. So, this is what is going to be in the rest of the course, and we will come back and begin at a fundamental level with the relation between symbols and thought, because our fundamental hypothesis is going to be that thinking or reasoning at least is going to be symbolic, that we can do reasoning with representing everything in terms of symbols. So, we will establish this connection and then move on to all the stuff that I spoke about. So, we will start with the next set of videos.